Mr. President,
I recognize the senator from Rhode Island.
in this place where big money now rules and in which fakery is now the order of the day and numbers no longer have to be real, there is one point that stands out, and that is that the fakery on the floor is belied by the language of the bill. If these assertions were true, they would not need to raise the debt limit. All of this fun and games, all of this parliamentary mischief that is happening right now crashes into the fact that in real markets, in the real world, outside of this fakery, the debt limit is actually a real thing. And I will take a moment to read from page 754 of this midnight monstrosity what it actually says, where it collides with the real world. Subtitle C, Increase in Debt Limit. Section 72001, Modification of Limitation on the Public Debt. Line 20. The limitation under Section 3101B of Title 31 United States Code, as most recently increased by Section 401B of Public Law 118.5, 31 U.S.C. 3101 Note, is increased by $5 trillion. $5 trillion. That's the real number here. That's where the rubber hits the road in real life. The maneuver that is being pulled right now to avoid that fact, the fact that the debt limit has to be increased by $5 trillion so that Republicans can give immense tax breaks to billionaires, has not been used for this before. I used it once. In the year 2000, a deal had been struck on how to score activities of the Power Marketing Administration. Does anybody really know about the Power Marketing Administration? It's a small thing. Over the years, the Congressional Budget Office started scoring the program differently than the Senate had agreed to in 2000. So in 2023 and 2024, Senate Budget Chair, me, and the House Budget Chair, Jody Arrington, on a bipartisan basis, invoked this section to have CBO return to the original Senate agreement and not the variation that they had created. This is what Section 312 has been used for, to resolve technical ambiguity, to advance a bipartisan appropriation deal, not to create Senate floor fakery belied by the $5 trillion debt limit hike that Republicans are obliged to pass to make good on this huge billionaire blowout that we're forcing through the Senate floor now. I yield the floor.
I recognize the senator from South Carolina.
I am using and yielding time off the bill.
Without objection.
Okay, thank you very, very much. So the debate and eventual voting on the big, beautiful bill has begun. Hallelujah. It's taken a while for us to get here, but we're going to have a debate worthy of a great country. We'll have what they think and what we think, and we're going to vote on this bill in the coming days, and I'm excited about that. I've worked a long time with my colleagues to get to where we are today, so to the American people. The debate is beginning right now regarding the big, beautiful bill, and I'll tell you why that's good news for you, but let me take a little bit of time to talk about current policy versus current law. I know everybody's on the edge of their seat at home. But here's what I would tell you about numbers and budget chairmen. I'm not the first budget chairman. There have been those who came before me. In 2008, Chairman Kent Conrad, a really nice guy from North Dakota, used a new baseline in the budget so he could get the farm bill in the budget. And Judd Gregg, really smart guy, former budget chairman, said the chairman of the budget committee declared the new baseline under a new budget. The budget chairman has a right to do that. That's what I'm doing. I'm setting the numbers. The parliamentarian said, that's my job as budget chairman. The resolution we're operating under to get us here, we voted to make that the case. So we're not doing anything sneaky. We actually voted to give me the authority to do this, and it passed. But again, I'm not the first chairman to change a baseline for different reasons. One, to get the farm bill in, and another occasion, Senator Sanders changed the baseline in 2022 when he was budget chairman under budget reconciliation to issue a budget rule allowing the numbers to change to get more money for Head Start. So Senator Sanders, as budget chairman, directed a new rule be written to get more money for Head Start. So don't tell me you've never done this before in terms of changing the baseline as budget chairman. The budget chairman under 312 sets the baseline. This has been acknowledged by Republicans and Democrats. The baseline has changed in the past based on the budget committee chairman's desire, one to get a farm bill in, and the other to change the numbers, a new rule to get Head Start spending. So this has been done before, but I'll be the first to say that what we're doing here is historic in a good way. In 2017, we passed the Trump tax cuts. They're due to expire in December. Why is that? Before I got here, current law was the way to score or implement tax policy. After 10 years, the tax cuts expired, current law. As budget chairman, I've decided to use current policy when it comes to cutting taxes. If you use current policy, they never expire. So the policies that were created in 2017 would not end in December. They would continue. And that's a good thing for the American people. That's a good thing for the economy because it gives you certainty. So I made a decision as budget chairman, working with my colleagues, to look at tax cuts, something important for the country, to give certainty to businesses and individuals and make sure after 10 years they don't arbitrarily go away and have a cliff. So I made that decision, my colleagues backed me up, and that's in the budget resolution governing the debate that we're here today. So why do we want to make the tax cuts permanent? Because if they expire in December, the average family of four in South Carolina will have a $1,700 increase. I don't want that, and I bet you people at home don't want that. So we have to deal with that. That cliff is coming, and not only do I want to avoid that cliff, I don't want to put us in that position ever again. So the tax cuts have generated more revenue for the government than CBO estimated in 2017. The one thing about our friends at CBO, I appreciate all your hard work, you've worked really hard. When it comes to taxing, they always get it wrong about how much revenue to be collected. So when you look at the years that have passed since 2017, on the corporate side and on the individual side, the revenue to the government has actually grown because of those tax cuts, and that's a good thing. So cutting taxes means more money for you and your family. Our friends on the other side, if you're waiting on them to cut your taxes, you're going to die waiting. So they're never going to do it. Why are we doing it? Because they won't do it. We could never get 60 votes for this. So the bottom line is we're going to make these tax cuts permanent, and that's a good thing for businesses. Expensing will be allowed so you can invest and grow in your business. You can buy new equipment. You can write it off sooner, and that will get more activity in the economy. It's not me saying that. There's a track record, Mr. President. you've been in business. This stuff works. They don't like it, but it works. If you're in business and the tax code encourages you to invest in your business, you will. This stuff literally works. And they hate it because it's money that could have gone to the government went back into the economy. What they don't realize, actually, the government gets more money. They just keep spending it. And we could do better on the spending side. And we are going to do better on the spending side. So this bill makes the 2017 tax cuts permanent. It avoids a tax increase for your family that's coming in December if we don't act now. It secures the border. One of the reasons there are more of us than our Democratic friends is how you screwed the country up for the last 4 years. We went from secure borders to completely open borders, absolute chaos, and that's why we're winning and you're losing. And you want to take us back to open borders. We're not going. We're not going back to your policies that allowed 8.3 million encounters at the border, 1.7 million gotaways, chaos to cities and communities. We're not going back to the policies that led to Laken Riley's murder in Georgia, where the man convicted for murdering her was captured several times, released because there was no detention space to hold him in Texas, and he left a free man, went to Georgia and killed this lady. That's happened too many times, and it's going to stop. Now, what are we doing to secure the border? We went from lawless borders to the most secure borders in 6 months because of President Trump. President Trump, you should be exceedingly proud. Holman, the whole team, you've locked that border down, but we want to do it in a way that it'll stay locked down for the president after you and beyond. So how do we secure the gains made by President Trump and his team? We're going to, in this bill, hire more ICE agents to expedite removal of people that shouldn't be here, particularly criminal elements, people that are dangerous. We're going to finish the wall. Not one Democrat, maybe one, no way would get 60 votes to hire more ICE agents. No way we would get Democratic help to finish the wall. And we're going to go from 40,000 detention beds to 125,000. This secure the border is about $175 billion. New technology along the border, fiber cable, so we don't go back to the days of open borders. This is in the bill. To those of you who voted for us and President Trump to secure the border, we're delivering through this bill. And they would never do what we're doing. I'll be the first to admit, when it comes to securing the border, they're never going to do what we're doing. We're hiring more ICE agents, we're finishing the wall, and we're increasing more detention beds so we don't let people out that can go and murder. I'm very proud of this. I wrote this part. This is money well spent. This will secure that border in perpetuity. President Trump, this is your plan. It is in our bill. Well done. To my friends on the other side, you had your chance and you screwed it up big time, and that's why we're in charge. Revitalize our military. The world is a dangerous place. We have $150 billion in this bill to help build out the Golden Dome, to help improve the quality of life of men and women serving in the military by improving their barracks and housing. They need the money, more weapons. It's in this bill, and we didn't have to get extorted to buy a bunch of butter to get $150 billion. We reduce government spending over a decade by $1.6 trillion. We're running deficits, national debt of $37 trillion. So what have we done here? In the last 5 years, from 2020 basically to now, Medicaid has grown by 50%. So what's happened is that Medicaid was originally intended for children and poor families, children and people who were disabled and couldn't work to provide health care. Count me in for that, makes a lot of sense. Along comes President Obama. He expands Medicaid to include able-bodied adults for the first time. And what he did was he incentivized states to include these people in Medicaid. For every new able-bodied adult, you get 90% of the cost from the federal government, 10% from the states. And Medicaid has grown 50%, is going to take over Medicare because of what President Obama did. So what are we going to do? We're going to try to deal with that in a responsible way. What about this idea? If you're not a child, if you're not disabled, you're able-bodied, and you don't have any children under 14, we're going to have a 20-hour-a-week work requirement for you to stay on Medicaid. That's a good thing. It's a good thing for the individual involved to be working. It's a good thing for the taxpayer for them to be working. But that seems to be a crime on the other side, to ask somebody to work that can work. How many people out there are listening to this? I don't know how many you are, but are you working every day? Are you going to work with kids? A lot of people do that, by the way. So one of the reforms in this bill is to introduce a work requirement to the additional population that President Obama put on Medicaid that was never intended on the original purpose of Medicaid. This work requirement is going to save a bunch of money. Finally, we're addressing the biggest scam I've seen in a very long time. Somewhere along the line, somebody figured out that at the state level, that if you tax doctors and hospitals and medical providers on the funds they get and take that revenue, you can actually get more Medicaid money. This is a money laundering scheme. It needs to come to an end as we know it. States have gone up to 6% of a provider tax. They take that tax revenue and they use it to get more money from the federal government. The hospitals and doctors don't lose, they get the money back. The state doesn't lose, they get more money. The only group that loses is the federal government, and we're deep, deep in debt. So we're going to reform the provider tax system that I think is abusive, very abusive. As to Medicaid, it's on a growth trajectory that will overtake Medicare. Now is the time to put common sense reform in place, not only to slow the growth, and we're not talking about cutting Medicaid, we're slowing the growth, but try to create some sense of fiscal responsibility. So to our chairman of the Finance Committee, you have constructed a package better than 2017. You have included some growth elements in the package that will allow the economy to grow because it will be in businesses' interest to invest. And I want to applaud you for this growth package. Now, what does this all mean? Current policy, current law. If you do what I have decided to do, make the tax cuts permanent, and you implement these reforms to Medicaid in other areas, you will, over the next 10 years, reduce the deficit by $507 billion. That's CBO, not me. Now, how do you do that? You grow the economy, and you begin to control spending in a common sense way. Most people can relate to that because they do it all the time. People at home sometimes have to work extra to meet the needs of their family, and they have to tighten their belt. So what have we achieved here in the one big beautiful bill? We're going to make your border as secure as it possibly can be and never go back to open borders. We're going to put in place border security measures to keep it secure. We're going to make the tax cuts permanent so your taxes do not go up in December of this year, and we're going to add additional pro-growth policies to help our economy. We're going to reform Medicaid in a way that makes sense, deal with the waste, fraud, and abuse of that program so that there's more money for the disabled and children, because the more money you give the able-bodied who can work, it's less money for children and people on disability. And one of the most perverse things about what President Obama did is that the reimbursement rates to states are higher for able-bodied adults than they are for disabled people and children. 90%. So President Obama created a system to entice states, lure them in to add people to Medicaid that are not disabled, not poor children, because his goal was to put everybody in the country under government-run health care, and the government reimbursement is higher for an able-bodied person than it is for a poor child or a disabled person. And we're going to stop that, because that's not fair. It's not fair to the taxpayer, and it's not fair to the population that we're trying to help. So we're going to control spending in a common sense way. We're going to revitalize our military at a time of great need. We're going to secure the border, and we're going to make the tax cuts that expire in December permanent so we don't have to deal with this every 10 years. It's a big, beautiful bill if you believe in cutting people's taxes, securing the border, having a strong military, and controlling government spending. It is a nightmare, this bill, for those who want to raise taxes, who want open borders, who want a weak military, and never want to control one dime of federal spending. This bill is your nightmare if you're for open borders. This bill is your nightmare if you want the government to grow without any limitation. This bill is your nightmare if you want a weak military, because it's going to give us a stronger military. So why do we have this debate? That's what they, through years of effort, have done. The military is always the last thing that gets funded when they're in charge. When they're in charge, you have no border. Completely broken, millions of people running through our country, lawless. When they're in charge, there is no limit to growing the government. They entice everybody to grow the government. And when they're in charge, they're never going to cut your taxes in any meaningful way. The tax rates since 2017, the top rate has been 37. If these tax cuts expire, your taxes, if you're a family of four, will go up by $1,700. And we'll go back to the 39.6 rate. Here's a question for the country. How much should the federal government take of anybody's income? What's a fair share? 37% seems pretty damn fair to me. Over a third of what you make, and that doesn't count state and local taxes. The number they would pick is probably a 90. So is 37% fair? I think yes. Most Americans think 25% is fair. You know, Jesus wants 10%. There is no number they won't embrace. So somewhere between 90 and 10, 37 is fair. This is not rewarding the wealthy. It's creating a number that makes sense. 37% going to the federal government is a fair share. It's over a third of what you make. And that doesn't count state and local taxes. This has been long, it's been hard, but we're about done. In a couple of days, we're going to pass the one big beautiful bill. President Trump's going to sign it. Mike Crapo and his staff deserve at least one day off. I cannot thank you enough for what you and your team have done. To my budgeteers, you have been terrific. You have worked really hard. To CBO and Joint Tax and all these people, hats off to your efforts to get us a quality product. To all of my colleagues who've rowed the boat with us, we're about to reach the shore. And when this boat comes ashore, every family in America can have a sigh of relief. Your taxes will not go up this December. You'll get a Christmas present of not having a tax increase. To those who've been yearning for a secure border, it will be secure. To those men and women in uniform, you're going to get some help and you desperately need it. And to those who think we should do something about the government's growth in a common sense way, we've achieved that. I am very proud of this bill. I'm very proud of President Trump. I'm very proud of the Republican team that has gotten us to this point. And to my Democratic colleagues, we'll work together where we can. But nobody over here ever expects you to do anything about the border because you've proven you can't. Nobody over here believes you're ever going to reduce the size of government because you don't want to. So the bottom line is we're about to make history, Mr. President. This is your first term. I don't know what comes later for you. Hope you're here a long time if that's what you want to be. You're a great senator. You're a good businessman. You've made a real success story. Family from Columbia. You've created a lot of job opportunity. I doubt if you'll ever do anything more important than this. Senator Crapo, you've been here a while. You're one of the smartest guys I've ever met. Everything you've done all your life has led to this moment. This is what you were built to do. This is what you were meant to do. You're the right man at the right time to do what this country desperately needs to stay on track to be safe and prosperous. To all my colleagues who are going to vote for this bill, you should be proud and you should talk about it because it's going to make us all safer and it's going to make us all more prosperous. Me being budget chairman is a quirk in the history of the Senate. This is not my thing normally, but I have really gotten into it and I've learned a lot thanks to my colleagues, and I'm proud to have the honor of being budget chairman at a time I think it matters the most. Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent that the following staff members from my staff and from Senator Merkley's staff be given all access floor passes for the consideration of the bill. Caitlin Wilson, Lillian Meadows, Scott Graber, Walker Turlock, Taylor Reedy, Democratic staff Mike Jones, Melissa Pistner, Josh Smith, and Tyler Evilsizer. Tyler, Evilsizer. I ask that unanimous consent.
Without objection.
With that, I will yield to my good friend from Idaho.
There's one more behind it.
Huh?
One more behind that.
Oh, wait a minute.
Nope.
That the use of calculators, whatever they are, be permitted on the floor of the Senate during consideration of the bill.
Without objection.
Mr. President,
I recognize the senator from Idaho.